At the end of last time, we defeated the lunatic cultist. This episode, we're going after the next big goal, defeating the Moonlord. Of course, we'll pick up a few new weapons along the way, including... So follow along as I figure out how exactly to go about fighting the Moonlord, and more, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, welcome back. This is the melee only account. My goals for the account are simple: obtain the best endgame weapons and defeat all of the bosses, all while only relying on melee weapons. We're at the point where we just defeated the lunar cultist, which means two things. One, a drop from the cultist, the ancient manipulator, is a new crafting station, which will grant us a new tier of weapons and armor. And two, as you can see in the message in the bottom left, the lunar invasion has begun and 4 celestial pillars have spawned around the map. And before I say anything else, I figured out I've been saying lunar cultist over and over last episode when it's lunatic cultist, which is not entirely wrong, but I don't think anybody even said anything about it in the comment section. Anyway, let's head home and head over to one of the celestial pillars. To the right of our house is the Vortex Pillar. As you can see, there's a force field surrounding the pillar. After 100 enemies are defeated, it goes down, allowing you to destroy the pillar. In the meantime, I'll be collecting 2 drops from enemies, Vortex Fragments and Meld Blobs. We'll need a lot of fragments for upcoming crafting, so it'll be a good idea to grab as much as I can get right now. The Vortex Pillar itself has a few thunder and range attacks, and also messes with my flying, which honestly make it one of the worst pillars in my opinion, but hopefully you get an idea of what a celestial pillar is if you don't already know. Here's the pillar down, and a bunch more fragments. Further right is the Nebula Pillar, and is basically the same deal. Enemies drop nebula fragments, and we defeat enough until the force field drops. And ow. Next is the Solar Pillar, which if you don't know is also known to be the melee pillar, because if you don't stay on the ground, a centipede monster will attack you. Please, I swear I'm melee, I just like projectile. Last is the Stardust Pillar, which is spawned in probably one of the worst spots I've ever encountered. Normally it's like flat ground and enemies swarm you. This is like 6 different pitfall traps. I have to dive in and out of each one, all while they fire range attacks at me. And with the last pillar down, the countdown begins. As you can see, the screen starts shaking, the music cuts out, and finally, he arrives. Which I don't actually want to fight just yet. Okay, now that I don't have to worry about the Moonlord, the pillars, and everything else, let's get the ancient manipulator down and see what kind of new weapons that we can make. Left click? No, right click. Place? Right click? God dang it. I shouldn't be allowed to have a pick hammer. Let me just briefly talk about some of the new materials that we just attained. In addition to all of the 4 fragments, we can combine all of them into a Galactica singularity, as well as combine the meld blobs with a bit of stardust to make some meld construct. And I know, all of that was basically gibberish. Basically, all of these extra crafting steps and ingredients will lead to some cool new weapons. Here's the Daybreak, a spear? Javelin? Potato tomato. If you recall back in episode 14, I made the Bone Breaker, a javelin that sticks into enemies, capable of dealing up to 120 damage a second. The Daybreak does the exact same, except we're gonna bump that number all the way up to a whopping 800 damage a second. That's insane. Oh, before I make anything else, I'm actually making the weapons to gear up for the next fight on our list, which is not Moonlord, but Ashram Deus, a giant worm from the Astral infection. So, continuing on, we can upgrade the Brimlash to the Brimlash Buster, which, let me read, 50% chance for triple damage and bolts explode into more bolts. So I did a quick test and this weapon kinda sucks. The DPS is not very good, and the bolts only explode after making contact with blocks and not enemies, so most of your homing bolts just home right back into the wall. Next weapon, I'm gonna need a Storm Saber, a rare drop from Cloud Elementals, so we're here at my janky corruption floating island. Combining this with the old Wind Blade, we can make the Storm Ruler, a sword that shoots projectiles that summons tornadoes. Also, yes, it's a reference to Dark Souls. Most importantly, we can summon a bunch of tornadoes, switch to another weapon, and our DPS can shoot through the roof for stationary targets. Not that anything's stationary, of course. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of maces or flails, so I might be a bit biased, but the next weapon is the Solar Eruption. It's got great damage, causes explosions and everything, is terribly inconsistent, as the large swing pattern makes it miss often. It's still incredible on targets with a lot of segments, like this wyvern, so keep that in mind as we're looking to fight Deus. So here's something that's not a weapon. The absorber is an accessory I've been meaning to make since episode 15, but I forgot I had to wait until the ancient manipulator to make one. Feel free to read on screen, but to sum up, I can move faster, gain life regen while standing still, reflect damage, have increased damage reduction, and even heal from a portion of damage received. Overall, a very defense-focused accessory, though I've been feeling pretty cramped in my accessories already, and I think it might replace my boots whenever I need a bit more survivability. Fights tend to be either survive and the boss will eventually die, or deal enough damage and defeat the boss quickly. Okay, we've got a bunch of upgrades, and I know I was saying we were gonna fight Deus next, but maybe I'll take this opportunity and go back and fight the 2 invasion events we've skipped, the Pumpkin Moon and the Frost Moon. Did I just crash? I just got the out of memory message. So to explain, I've been running Terraria Calamity fine up to this point, but sometimes I have the 64-bit version of tMod installed, which, shameless plug, I need for the series over on Honeydust channel. 64-bit tMod does some really weird things, which you'll see later. Alright, I'm back, and I'm gonna see if the 64-bit version does better. At least it won't crash from running out of memory. Let me really quickly craft the Pumpkin Moon Medallion, which summons the invasion event. So far, it's an easy event with wave after wave of really weak enemies. I think the next wave is our first boss, and oh god, why is the HP number super tiny? This is number 1 of the weird things that 64-bit tMod does. Anyway, there's 2 bosses to this event, and this fire shooting tree is one of them. The other is the Pumpkin, which is a giant pumpkin with scythes for hands. I know, very spooky. Anyway, all jokes aside, this event is actually pretty easy until wave 15, the endless wave. So I'm killing the last morning wood, and wave 15 hits. So the wave starts, then 3 pumpkins show up, and I'm like, okay, whatever, sure. Then another one, and then... So yeah, it's literally just an endless gauntlet of this until daytime. After a gruesome 9 minutes... Oh god, it's too gory. Nah, I'm just kidding. But look at all these drops. Okay, that was probably the worst 10 minutes spent, but because of it, I'm basically doubling my money and then some, bringing the total up to 70 plat. Feel free to applaud now. Time for a bit of a palate cleanser. I need more life alloys as usual, so here's a Ravager kill. Ooh, so I was on my way back to the arena and I totally forgot about this in my piggy bank. In 1.3 Calamity, there's a mechanic called Proficiency, and you get experience every 2 seconds you deal damage with a certain attack style. It gives you an innate increase in melee damage, speed, and crit. And I'll be making a small mistake in the following clips. I'm like, okay, I should increase my proficiency. Unfortunately, I'm soft cap at mastery level 10 until I defeat the Moonlord, making the gap between experience from 2 seconds to a whopping 40 seconds. So I'm constantly checking and confused as to why it doesn't go up. I even equipped the level meter in my accessory slot, which has the cooldown period, but really I have to wait until the Moonlord. So that's how I ended up here at the Eater of Worlds, confused as ever. Anyway, I said 2 more invasion events, but it's actually 3. Mostly because I didn't feel like counting this one, the Frost Legion, which is basically only a source of snow and candy cane blocks. Just a bunch of snowmen with stabbies and guns. Here's the real event, Frost Moon. And, oh god, visual glitch. Yes, the Frost Moon. So the Frost Moon is very similar to the Pumpkin Moon, with its own share of tree boss, Everscream. It also has a giant cyborg gun Santa, which is a sentence I thought I'd never have the chance to say in my entire life. And the most important boss, the Ice Queen, who, simply put, shoots ice magic at you. Bosses are a lot harder to kill here compared to the Pumpkin Moon, so no 7 pumpkin business of wave 15. Anyway, the event is done, and I quickly sold all the extra drops. I'm going through and sorting out my swords for crafting a few more, and I found out I ran out of Souls of Sight. So here's a quick refight with the Drayden's remote. And Jesus Christ, what the hell is wrong with Skeletron Prime? Why does he have 2 heads? Okay, let's just relaunch in regular tMod. We might risk crashing again, but whatever. And he's still screwed up. Either way, kill done, souls obtained, sword made, and we're stuck at a later crafting step as usual. Just doing all the small chores of sword upgrades before we move on. Which means more life alloy collecting, so we're back to more Ravager. And dude, what the heck is going on with the interface? Why is the HP bar here? Alright, I think I'll go fix this. There was a pirate message invasion while I was crafting, so the Ravager HP bar got shifted to the left, but I gave everything a fresh reboot. So we're back, and here's the sword I needed all the life alloy for. The Grand Guardian. Yes, it was worth all the pain. The Grand Guardian lowers enemy defense by 1 every strike. When enemies have 0 defense, further attacks heal you. This, along with true melee explosions and bolts fired when enemies drop to half HP, make it quite versatile. Really nice to have an alternative healing method to the vampire knives, though the knives are still superior in raw healing amount. Still, this gives me a new method to fight. I lowered the enemy defense with the Grand Guardian and then switched to a higher DPS weapon, allowing me to maximize the damage as much as possible. Not exactly sure which weapons are the best to leave on my hotbar yet, but let's go take on the challenge I've been itching to do. And before I go, I have a promise to fulfill to sync. It's been Desert Worm, Eater Worm, and now Astral Worm, so it's only fair that I have the Rain Hat equipped, right? Ashram Deus is the giant worm boss of the astral infection. Tons of projectiles and multiple segments, which means that lasting weapons are better, like the Storm Saber's tornadoes or the Solar Eruption. Once Deus is half HP, they split. One worm leaves traps while the other shoots projectiles. Similarly, one worm burrows while the other flies above. Yeah, that's a lot of damage. Third attempt in, and I can confidently say that this fight is not so much about dealing damage, but more about surviving. With as high a priority on keeping my HP high and swapping my boots with the absorber, I took down Ashram Deus. So, in terms of the aftermath, Deus is an alternative source of the 4 fragments, which is a nice bonus. In the treasure bag, we find a few treats. First is the microwave yo-yo. What do I mean by that, Knogo, you might ask? Well, let me just show you. I haven't really used yo-yos, and I don't really plan to. The important drop is right here, Hide of Deus. taking damage or inflicting true melee drops stars. Taking damage also boosts true melee damage by 50%. It also reflects damage taken and inflicts them with astral infection, which deals 37.5 DPS and lowers their contact damage by 5%. Overall, it's one of the most important accessories for true melee builds, which is precisely why Knogo the coward can't use it at all, seeing as how basically all of my weapons are projectile melee weapons. Now that Deus is defeated, I now have access to Astro Ore, which I can obtain from mining or defeating the new enemies in the Astral Infection. And sure, there's new weapons, tools, and armor from the ore, but there's something we've been missing out on for a really long time. The True Biome Blade is now in our hands. Each new form of the sword combines 2 forms of the previous 8 forms. Swordsmith's Pride combines the blade projectiles from Pure Clarity and the giant swinging blade of Heaven's Might. Sanguine Fury combines the bouncing blades from Arid Grandeur and the dash from Decay's Report. Lamentations of the Chained combine the whip from Grogknitter's Touch and the slowing blades from Biting Embrace. And last, Mercurial Tides adds shockwaves to the charge attack of Extant Abhorrence and the rippling waves of Gesher for the Drowned. The sword still holds 2 forms at once, but now benefits from a passive effect from the other held form. Swordsmith's passive adds the blade projectiles that also apply the armor crunch debuff. Sanguine's passive adds a chance to heal 7 HP. Lamentation's passive adds a floating chain that swings around you and slows enemies. And the Mercurial passive causes you to emit shockwaves during attacks. After using it for a little while, I'm not sure what exactly is the best combination and how to even effectively use the weapon. Swordsmith is a really great passive, but the attacks come out very slowly while active. Sanguine's biggest flaw is the knockback from Arid Grandeur blades. And the periodic healing is nice, but not consistent. Lament's attacks comes out instantly, but the attack is only effective when the enemy is at range, and you can make use of the guaranteed crit effect of the whip attack. The passive deals decent damage and slows, so generally not bad to keep. I haven't been able to find out where the Mercurial is useful. The charge attack is too slow to use normally, and even at multiple enemies, Swordsmith and Laments can do the job faster. Likewise, the passive shockwave has very limited range. The weapon overall has a very low DPS for a single target, but excels at multiple enemies. Though I'm not exactly sure that this is necessarily true, because I think there's a way to get an insanely high level of DPS with this weapon, so I'll keep this in mind, but we'll move on for now. We've got our hands on a new ore, which means new armor and tools. Astro Armor is a general armor set that is good for all classes, with a couple of stats like mana and max minion increase that I'm not really interested in. What I am interested in is the 63 defense, 35% damage, 25% crit chance, 15% move speed, and 20 max life. It also offers creature, treasure, ore, and danger detection, and 3 stars fall on critical strikes. While it does have lower defense than the hydrothermic armor, it has much higher offensive capabilities. Pair this with a few kills in the Astral Desert for Hadarian Wings, which offer a 10% increased speed and jump with Astral Armor. Another weapon upgrade is the Baleful Harvester from the Horseman Blade from the Pumpkin Moon we fought earlier, which can be summed up with good effect, lackluster DPS. I did a quick renovation because I kept getting stuck on this wall. Added a bubble for the water since I need a water source for potion making. And now the guide doesn't want to stay. Still says it's valid housing to me. I'll have to solve the problem later. Just going back and killing a few bosses for some old weapons I'll need for later upgrades, as well as testing the new armor. Duke Fishron for the mace, which I don't need now. Plaguebringer Goliath for the Virulence, which I was hovering my mouse over last episode saying there was nothing I needed from PBG. The next upgrade needs Luminite, which is after Moonlord, so we're still stuck on that front. Something I can make in terms of upgrades right now needs the Influx Waver, a sword drop from the Martian Invasion. It's a 1 in 9 drop, so it really shouldn't be bad. Why did I even say that? So I've done all the math, and it looks like my 1 in 9 is more a 1 in 28. Can't say I'm surprised, but man, that was brutal. This, along with the magic weapon from Leviathan and Anahita, and a previous spear, combines into Tenebrious Tides, which I wish I made earlier because this weapon would have absolutely destroyed Deus. Either way, I think that's all the weapons I wanted out of the way, and looking at the boss log, the thing I've been dreading all episode is here. It's finally time to take down the Moonlord, and that also means it's finally time to unveil the next panel of the wall mural. In the middle is the True Biome Blade, and the iconic lightning that strikes it. I first made the sword as I wanted that to be the focus of the whole piece. Then I blotted out the shapes for the hands, body, head, and then painted them along the way. Thickened them, added shadows, coloring, and a bit of texture to the glass in the background. I have to say, it honestly turned out less good than I was hoping for, but having freehanded it using only paints, I think it came out looking pretty good. And there's nothing left for me to do but fight the Moonlord. And I'm back here to the Cultist. I can make the summon to fight the Moonlord right away, but let's see how much stronger I am from last episode. And this time was so much easier. Here's the first pillar down, second, third, fourth, and the countdown begins. My goal here is not to defeat the Moonlord yet, but to learn everything I can from the fight. I thought I might have to make a long bridge all the way across to outrun the Moonlord, but it looks like I can avoid everything with good dodging, a flying mount, and the Rod of Discord. The most important attack to dodge is the laser attack whenever the middle eye opens, even if it means to stop attacking for a few seconds. The fight progression is fairly straightforward too. I have to defeat eyes on each hand and a center eye on Moonlord's forehead. As each eye is defeated, an invincible floating eye which fires projectiles spawns. Once all the eyes are defeated, then I can attack the Moonlord directly. I either lower all of the eyes until I'm ready to defeat them all at once, or I get good at dodging. Well, either way, I think I'm ready for a serious attempt at Moonlord. I'm gonna start the fight with the Grand Guardian to lower Moonlord's defense and make the fight easier in the long term. There's something I have to talk about. You see, there's an in-game mechanic that I haven't been taking advantage of until now. You can pay the nurse NPC to heal you to full HP. This isn't limited to outside of fights, and people sometimes make whole arenas dedicated to healing at the nurse quickly and getting right back into battle. But I'll use it here. It's the best way for me to wait for the middle eye, since I decided not to defeat all of the eyes at the same time. Pause. In this short moment, I have an important decision to make. I noticed that in the last dive back, the nurse NPC died. While the nurse mechanic, nearly unlimited healing, is powerful, the flaw is that in the short time you're getting healed, the nurse NPC is vulnerable to damage from the boss. That means no more healing outside of potions and regen, and my potion is currently on cooldown. But you know how I mentioned earlier that I think the True Biome Blade can reach a hypothetical high DPS on a single target? Numbers I can only imagine on stationary targets? I'm gonna put that to the test. What if I told you that the knockback effect of Sanguine's Fury can be reduced while riding the UFO? This, combined with the slow effect of the Chains passive from Laments, means that Moonlord isn't going anywhere. Though, I won't be going anywhere either. It's going to be either me or the Moonlord standing at the end of this, and I'm going to risk it all. Hey, I hope you guys had a wonderful new year. It's actually crazy to me that this series and my YouTube endeavor has been going on and it's been almost a year. I've been learning a lot as a content creator over the last year, and even learned that I'm actually not that big of a fan of streaming Terraria, at least for this series anyways. We'll figure something out. Hopefully, you'll stay tuned as I continue on this series, as well as a few different things I have planned for this year. Either way, I appreciate the support and continued viewership greatly, and I hope y'all have a good one. Take care.